To Breakfast Extra, where we dive into the deep world waters and stories of what formed Nigeria, all the little bits and bobs that shaped our nation. Today, as we bask in the afterglow of Democracy Day celebrations, we take a sobering history lesson as how Nigeria, fresh from the euphoria of independence, tragically lost its democratic footing in the First Republic. So join us, myself, Mazino Appeal, and Judith Atibi, as we unravel the events of the 1964 federal elections and the 1965 Western Region elections marred by allegations of rigging and electoral malpractice, which set the stage for political instability and the eventual collapse of our nascent democracy. This is a history lesson ripped from the pages of our curriculum that most Nigerian education systems, well, they choose to omit. Our argument is, how can we know what we are vying for if we do not know what we lost or even how we lost it? Well, let's try to define Nigeria and democracy. And to do that, let's start from the very beginning. 1960, the year Nigeria gained its independence from British colonial rule. This marked the birth of the First Republic, a period filled with hope, challenges, and, of course, insignificant political developments that laid the groundwork for the nation's future. Now, remember, the First Republic of Nigeria spanned from October 1st, 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from British colonial rule, until the first military coup in January 15th, 1966. This period was marked by democratic governance based on a parliamentary system similar to that of the United Kingdom. The First Republic was characterized by regionalism and ethnic-based political parties, which significantly influenced the country's political dynamics.
Now, the key figures and political parties that staged this period included the following well-known individuals. There was Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa of the Northern People's Congress, hailing from northern Nigeria as the leader of the NPC. Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa became Nigeria's first prime minister. The NPC was predominantly Hausa and Fulani and had significant support in the northern region. There was also Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. He represented the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, which is the NCNC, and hailed from eastern Nigeria. Nnamdi Azikiwe, a key figure in Nigeria's independence movement, initially served as Governor General from 1960 to 1963, and then as Nigeria's first ceremonial president when the country became a republic in 1963. The NCNC was predominantly Igbo and had strong support in the eastern region. There was also Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He was a leader of the opposition party, the Action Group, AG, of the Western Nigeria region. Now, Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the premier of the Western region and later became the leader of the opposition at the federal level. The AG was predominantly Yoruba and had strong support in the Western region. There was also Sir Hamadu Bello of the Northern People's Congress, NPC, of northern Nigeria. Now, Sir Hamadu Bello, the Sardauner of Sokoto, was the premier of the northern region and a predominant political figure in northern Nigeria. Now, he chose to remain in regional politics, allowing Tafawa Balewa to become prime minister at the federal level. There was also Michael Okpara. He was also of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, which is the NCNC. Remember the party? The one that Nnamdi Azikiwe was? Yes, of course, of the eastern Nigeria. Now, Okpara succeeded Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe as premier of the eastern region when Azikiwe became Governor General and later president. Now, there was also Samuel Akintola. He represented the Nigerian National Democratic Party, which is the NNPD of Western Nigeria. And Samuel Akintola became premier of the Western region after a split within the Action Group led to the formation of the NNDP, which aligned with the NPC and NCC at the federal level.
Now, the First Republic was marked by alliances and coalitions among the major political parties. At independence, the NPC formed a coalition government with the NCNC, enabling them to have a majority in the federal parliament. The alliance was strategic as it brought together the predominantly northern NPC and the predominantly eastern NCNC, creating a balance of power between the two regions. The AG, led by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, positioned itself as the main opposition party. The AG was focused on the development of the Western region and advocated for federalism and regional autonomy. Internal conflicts and disagreements within the AG eventually led to its weakening and the emergence of the NNDP. The NNDP was formed by a faction of the AG led by Samuel Akintala. The NNDP aligned with the NPC and NCNC, further marginalizing the AG and consolidating the power of the ruling coalition. Now, in the midst of discontent in the power formulas prescribed by the British colonial masters, the First Republic experienced significant controversies related to population censuses in 1962 and 1963. Accusations of manipulation and regional bias fueled tensions and distrust among the regions.
So you see, census taking in Nigeria was a critical exercise because the population figures were used to determine the allocation of political representation and resources. The first post-independent census was conducted in 1962, and a second one followed in 1963 due to disputes and accusations of manipulation surrounding the initial count. Now, the 1962 census was the first major population count conducted by the newly independent Nigerian government. However, the results of this census were rejected due to widespread allegations of rigging and inflation of population figures by various regions. Now, the northern region, led by the Northern People's Congress, NPC, was accused of inflating its population figures to maintain its dominant political position. Now, similar allegations were made against the western region as well, which was controlled by the Action Group AG, where it was believed that figures were exaggerated to boost political representation. There's also the Eastern region under the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC, also faced accusations of manipulation and manipulating the numbers to gain an advantage as well. So the rejection of this 1962 census results was based on these allegations, which is, I don't know if it was justified, but it led to the need for a fresh census in 1963.
And then, in response to the controversies of the 1962 census, a new census was conducted in 1963. However, this census also faced similar issues. I'll recount them. Population inflation was the first. The 1963 census results showed an unprecedented increase in population figures across all regions. The figures were as follows: Northern region, 29.8 million, Western region, 10.3 million, Eastern region, 12.4 million, and the Midwestern region, 2.5 million. Now, these numbers were highly disputed. There was also political implications. The inflated figures were believed to be politically motivated. Higher population numbers meant greater political representation in the federal parliament and more resources allocated to the respective regions. Also, ethnic tensions. The census controversy heightened ethnic tensions. Each region accused the other of dishonesty, further polarizing the political landscape. And also, the 1964 federal elections and the 1965 Western region elections were marred by allegations of rigging and electoral malpractices. Now, all of these issues exacerbated political instability and eroded public confidence in the democratic process.
And so, this is what happens to the First Republic. It came to an abrupt end with the military coup on January 15th, 1966. The coup was led by a young military officers. In fact, there were several. One of them was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu, who was disillusioned by the corruption and political turmoil. Now, the coup resulted in the assassination of key political leaders, including Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa and Premier Ahmadu Bello. Now, although the coup failed to establish a new political order, it created a power vacuum that led to Major General Johnson Agoirosi assuming control as the first military head of state. Now, his tenure was short-lived, by the way, as a counter-coup by northern officers in July 1966 led to his assassination and the rise of Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon as the new military leader. He was quite young by the time, I think it was in the early 30s. Now, the First Republic's legacy is a complex one. It was marked by initial hopes for democratic governance, overshadowed by regional and ethnic tensions, political instability, and ultimately military intervention. So, this was when we lost our democracy in 1996, or rather 1966. And so, on the show today, we're going to go through the journey, chronicle what went wrong. And the truth is, it's always been wrong. You're welcome to Breakfast Extra.
Indeed, welcome. Join us today as we take a look at where we lost democracy. My name is Mazino Appeal, and of course...
And I'm Judith at TV. Let's get started, shall we?
Welcome once again. Once again, you're welcome to Breakfast Extra with Mazino Appeal and Judith Atibi. And today, we delve into a very interesting bit of Nigerian history as we take a look at our first and second republic, how we lost democracy in the first place, and throughout the show, all the, well, events that occurred up until now, our 25th year in our current democratic system. But first, like we did from before, a little history class. And of course, we'll be joined by a very respected individual to discuss what exactly went wrong in that first republic. Now, Nigeria's first republic was born on October 1st, 1963, following our independence from British colonial rule in 1960. This period was marked by a parliamentary system of governance with Nnamdi Azikiwe as the ceremonial president and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa as the prime minister. It was a time of great hope, of course, and potential, but also a significant challenging time as regional tensions and political rivalries began to emerge.
Unfortunately, the First Republic was short-lived. In January 1966, a military coup led by Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu overthrew the government, leading to a period of instability and a subsequent civil war. Nigeria's Second Republic was inaugurated in 1979, ushering in a presidential system modeled after the United States, with Shehu Shagari elected as the first executive president. Now, this era, too, faced its own set of challenges, including economic difficulties and allegations of corruption. And so to help us understand these pivotal moments in our history, we have with us today Dr. Yanusu Tanko. He's the chief spokesperson. Yunusa Tanko, I beg your pardon, is the chief spokesperson Obi Dati organization. Welcome to the show, and many thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. Good to have you.
Let's get started and just talk about basically the key political and economic challenges that was faced by Nigeria during the First Republic.
You know, when you are doing your intro, I just cast my mind back and I'm trying to visualize some of the things that happened in black and white at that period. It's quite a lot, quite a lot. In fact, a child that was born probably 10, 20 years ago, when you listen to this intro, will keep on wondering, what was all that for? It's a big question. But then, when you look at it critically, some of the major issues that really transpired during that period as a result of the British colonial masters trying to form an amalgamation within this particular three regional group, especially the north, southwest, and then the southeast. Then probably with a little mix of what SLB was doing too in the middle belt at that time. Give you a sense of feeling there was an attempt in trying to make sure that you unite the nation. And then they also understand that there are different ethnic groups and that they speak in different dialects and different formation, even in dressing. But the attempt was that, okay, if we have already understood these particular people, why don't you try to build them into a strong force? Because all of them have dynamic, intelligent capacity. Unfortunately, that particular attempt was truncated by that military coup. The military coup, of course, that saw the outset of Sadana of Sokoto, quite a number of people were actually killed, except for Nnamdi Azikiwe, who actually traveled out of the country. And then the insinuation was, or the suspicion was, that he was priorly informed, probably, of that particular coup. So he traveled out of the country, and so his life was spared. This was according to Wikipedia in their own historical background to the historical issues of the First Republic. But then he ended up becoming the first prime minister. And when it comes to issue of power, suspicion, lack of trust become the order of the day. And so another coup now took place. Now, the initial coup that took place from Kaduna Nzeogwu actually spark up the whole problem. Because I try to really go through my history book and I'm trying to find out exactly what must have made him to get into that particular coup d'etat. And of course, normally, majority of anybody that engage in coup will cite the issue of corruption, manipulation, and all of that. And that may have been the reason why. But then democratically, some of these particular issues could have been dealt with in such a way that possibly will have dealt with the corrupt persons who are involved in such corrupt tendencies and will have been dealt with according to the provisions of the law and the constitution as at that time. Maybe if we had managed the situation at that time, probably the proposed regional development that majority of some of the proponents of the reason for a constitutional reform and going back to parliamentary system of government will have had a better case because it will have held on. Now we now started the practice of pick and choose. Can we try this? Can we try this? This didn't work for us. This didn't work for us. I think those are some of the building blocks that have led to some of the challenges that we saw in the First Republic. And then an attempt was made in the Second Republic when you see who took over again. Then there was the issue of Shehu Shagari, who became the president as at that time, the MPN, the UPN, and all. Here, majority of what transpired at that particular period of time was very interesting because it was an issue of ideological belief that has built the five political parties that were then. That was the UPN, who was strongly interested in the area of education and the likes of it. The MPN was more interested in building agriculture and economic base, and then all the other political parties follows, of course. You remember the GMPP, who was talking about the politics without bitterness and all. At those periods in time, as we know, we are very little, but we were seeing some of the things that was going on. Mm-hmm. There was this particular way in which politics was practiced. It was basically, when you go to rallies, you are not being sponsored, you are not being paid transportation money. You want to go to rallies and listen to the words of Obafemi Awolowo. You want to go and listen to Shehu Shagari talking about Nigerian agriculture and unity. You want to listen to Nnamdi Azikiwe, you want to listen to Oziri Ibrahim and all of those ones.
Now, Dr. Yunusa, I wanted to pick on something that you said earlier where you talked about going back either to the parliamentary system of things or to the regional system of things, which I think you meant was a better off system for Nigeria. However, let's talk about the seeds that were planted by the colonial system before they left Nigeria for independence, 1960. Do you think that these seeds might have been what we are suffering from right now when it comes to drawing the lines across tribal difference in Nigeria, favoring perhaps maybe one part of the country over the other? Because that seems to be the one thing that continued to reoccur. The first coup in the First Republic was actually stemmed from the fact that people were disenfranchised or thought that they were. So there was a coup by northern soldiers, or at least it started with the northern soldiers' agitation. However, it was a failed attempt, but still led to a military system with Aguiyi Ironsi in power. So do you think that there is any responsibility to be placed on the colonial system just before 1960?
No, and the colonial masters understand our dynamism in our country, or at least the areas in which they carved for themselves before they give the independence. They were very, very sure that they knew that there were diversities. So what they tried to do is that practicing that particular Westminster system of government, parliamentary system of government, allowing the regions to take shape according to their different cultural belief and all, then trying to build a center that all can be accessible to. That was a good idea because at that time, some of the regions would have developed at their own pace and probably be challenged by all others. I give you a clear-cut example of what is happening in the UAE. The UAE is also a different groups of about 3 or 5 of them, and then all of them have been developed in such a way that you will find uniqueness in each of those particular regions. When you go to Abu Dhabi, when you go to Dubai, when you go to, they are different. But yet, most of them are not really complaining because there was equity and fairness in terms of sharing of resources. What we didn't have was that we have leaders some of them were greedy with what is available for the benefit of all. So had it been that there was a collective responsibility in building a nation, the key issue was that build Nigeria, not build only your region. Put Nigeria as the focus point, as number one, then think about others as secondary. What we do, or what most of our leaders are doing, is that they think about their own microscopic area and forgetting about the country itself. And that brings in problems. So anytime you find any leader in position of power, you'll be thinking about how do I develop my own region? Not even region, let me develop my own people. Not only my people, let me even develop my own house. So they go down the line only to their microscopic interests. But when you put the interest of the nation first and you are contributing to the building of the nation, people will see, they all know that you are uniting the nation. Because what we need really as a country is uniting the nation. So that then everybody can now believe that we can work together. So every part that needs to be developed by any leader could be touched. That way it could have made a lot of sense. But unfortunately, they short-lived that particular attempt of building that united nation. Now, everybody is now looking out or yearning for his own particular person, my tribe, my religion, and all. And that has created a big problem for us as a nation.
Dr. Tanko, you make a fair point in terms of inclusivity and diversity. I mean, we see this even in present day now with South Africa and its move for unity or coalition government as the ANC is pulling all the other political parties. And also, we also see this with affirmative actions when it comes to more diverse countries that have different race and tribes in it as well. But you also mentioned the transition of different systems of governance during the First and the Second Republic. And I'd like for us to dwell on that in a bit. In what ways did the transition from a parliamentary system in the First Republic to a presidential system in the Second Republic impact Nigeria's political stability? Or did it even impact its stability in any way?
The attempt for the presidential system of government is trying to continuously looking for solution of uniting the country together. And unfortunately, had it been that the attempt that was made at the Second Republic held sway, I mean, for example, majority of the political parties as at that time were not talking about the region. We're not talking about ideological development that can translate into development for all the region. I give an example. Shehu Shagari building homes and all, Shagari quarters or Shagari federal housing estate, it is virtually almost everywhere in the country. The agricultural program that was being done by that particular MPN was all over the country. Now, the UPN idea as regard to education was education for all. It was not for a particular region. So if we measure our political milestones across issues that concerns everybody, it can translate into unity. You see, what Nigeria needs is good governance. Good governance, when it's been done and administered to the people, it gives a sense of unity to everybody.
All right,
if,
Dr.
for
Tanko.
example,
oh, go ahead and finish that.
For example, we decide that we want to eradicate the nomadic system of movement of cows and cattle that usually move from Mali, Timbuktu, Niger, and coming to Nigeria and going down south to Calabar and the rest of them. And we say, okay, in Nigeria, it is an idea that we do a nomadic education. You can find Fulani housemen everywhere in the country. But when you build a program for the benefit of everyone, either you put ranches everywhere so that they can be in particular place, you could see the development will not be only for the benefit of the Fulani people, it will be the benefit for the whole country. Because when you go to a ranch in Calabar, the same thing you meet in Calabar is what you meet in Kano or in Adamawa. And so therefore, if the same thing that bedevil a country in the southern part is being translated in everywhere, it will collapse the country to become like one. So that people will not be thinking that whatever you do You are doing it for the advantageous position of a particular people or particular tribe or particular nation.
So, Dr. Tanko, we're trying to round this segment off, but I wanted to ask you, from the experience from the First and the Second Republic, from Nnamdi Azikiwe to Shehu Shagari, the policies that were made or maybe failed, what sample can modern leaders, especially now in our 25 years of democracy, take that might serve us well when it comes to political and economic stability currently?
Well, any of the system you pick, you may decide to take a parliamentary system of government or a presidential system of government. The key word there is how do you administer this particular system? Of course, there's a leadership style. You have the laissez-faire one, you have the democratic, you have the mix and all of that particular kind of leadership and all. But every leader, as long as he put all this particular leadership style together and mix them into one, the idea is that how does the common man on the streets get 3 square meal without him have to look for somebody to assist him or support him or somebody that he knows before he can get food? How does a common man or child get education without really looking for how am I going to get money to finance myself? How do we get power and electricity? All of these indices are things that gives you good life, health facilities and all. Most of the developed countries that you see develop in this particular area. Even if you decide to be regional, you must provide these particular indices to make you become a champion among all the other regions. That is what makes you look better. I'll give you an example again. You want to go to Canada. A lot of people say Canada, and even making it into a song. What really makes that particular country much better than a Nigerian country is because there is fairness and equity of dispensation of governance to the people. So once that becomes the key bundle that bonds you together, it is easy for you to administer any system of governance.
Dr. Tanko.
Because any system of government is when you do the right.
Dr. Tanko, we want to say thank you very much for joining us to help, well, unpack everything inside of our First and Second Republic when it comes to democracy in Nigeria. We have indeed enjoyed your session here, and we hope that we have another time where we can also call on you to help tell more about these systems and how it can help our current democratic system. Thank you once again, Dr. Tanko.
Thank you very much, and God bless Nigeria.
Indeed. Now, do stay tuned, because coming up, we're still going to be taking a look at the next few republics inside of Nigeria, since we celebrated Democracy Day only just on Wednesday, and also a quick touch on that one. You might want to stay because it's going to be a fully packed show. We're going to a quick break now, and when we get back, more inside of Breakfast Extra.
That sting should be big report, but all the same, it's time for our big report, all right? And this time we'll take a look at a story that has sparked widespread outrage and controversy across the nation. That's quite a big one. So Nigeria is currently facing significant economic challenges, with millions of citizens struggling to make ends meet. Now, amidst this hardship, the recent expenditure of 21 billion naira to build the official residence for Vice President Kashim Shettima has ignited a firestorm of criticism and anger.
Firestorm, indeed it is. The new residence, which boasts an office of the Vice President's wife, a mosque, a chapel, and recreational facilities, was commissioned on Friday. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, and numerous Nigerians have condemned the expenditure as wasteful and indicative of misplaced priorities by the Tinubu administration. Now, to provide us with more insight into this story, we have with us today our new central correspondent in Abuja, Amadine Uyi. Amadine, good morning. Good to have you on Breakfast Extra.
Good morning.
Great. Now, Amadine, I'm sure you're going to tell us all about it, but let's start by asking you the facts here. Can you please give us an overview of the events that led up to the commissioning of the Vice President's new residence?
Okay, I know that several years ago, when the proposal to construct that house at that current rate was first put forward, it was about 5 billion naira. The same way there was outrage, this time there was also outrage. Despite that, the federal government commenced the construction of that house. I think it was awarded a little higher than that. between 6 to 7 billion. I can't really get the figures. But what I know is that at a point in time, it stalled. And then over time, because of inflation, the price to complete it kept on increasing and increasing and increasing. And when the current administration, just the last administration, not this current administration, said it was going to complete that facility, that it had taken too long. So they reviewed the contract and upgraded it to about 21 billion naira, but they did not complete it. After the contract was reviewed, I think there was paucity of funds. But what happened was that when the current administration came on board from May the 29th last year, it emerged that project as one of the projects it would use to mark its 1 year in office. So the current minister of the FCT tried to mobilize funds, engage the original contractors, Julius Berger, and compel them to try to do their best to complete it. Now, I went into that facility when it was being constructed. Just like you said, it has offices, it has a swimming pool, it has other recreational facilities, it has a mosque, and it has some quarters for the domestic staff of the vice president. So that facility, that property has finally been completed at that rate of 21 billion naira, which the last administration reviewed before they left office.
Now, Amadin, let's talk about the reaction that we've seen so far. We've seen, CSOs like Serap come out to say that this has violated both international treaties and conventions when it comes to the price. There's also the widespread, criticism by Nigerians, whether via social media and even, political analysts and critics likewise. But just give us a bit of a plethora or an array of criticism so far, you being on the ground and seeing the situation as it unfolds.
Now, there have been two major groups who have expressed their opinion about the facility. First of all, I'll classify them into those who are pro and those who are against. I'll start with those who are against. Serap has his point when he says that look at the current economic realities, and is that a priority project? And that government, when workers are battling for minimum wage, battling for an increase in minimum wage, government still has the expenses, has the finance, can muster that funding to be able to complete that project. So many have criticized the attempt by the Federal Capital Administration. It was actually the FCT, because they completed the project, the FCT administration, not directly under the presidency, that mustered the will to complete it, and they completed it. But there's another school of thought, those who are saying that as long as that project has started before now, some way, sometime, it would still have been completed. And the better it is completed now, the price will keep on going up. Remember, I said that when that was first brought several years ago, I can't remember the year it was brought to the parliament, the FCT had defended a budget of about 5 billion naira to complete that property. They could not, because of widespread criticism, after about 1 or 2 years, the price had gone up before they awarded that contract. And others said that considering the position of the vice president, remember that that house is not only for residential. There he will be entertaining dignitaries, other world leaders, heads of agencies, that he needed a befitting edifice, a place where he will be comfortable to host them and be able to do his work as the vice president. So there are these two different schools of thought, which people, opinions which people are bringing out. But just like you said, it's the citizens that will have to make the final decision. Serap, as a civil society organization, believing that it has that right to criticize some of these actions being taken by government, because it's taxpayers' funds that are being used to construct the edifice. They've done what they can do, but we are watching and observing the situation and trying to keep a keen eye on the development.
We're out of time. I was going to ask you that since you inspected the building before it was, since you visited the building before it was completed, did you have a chance to go in there after it was done? You know, you're an Abuja bureau chief now. You should have an invite by now.
Now it's off limits. When we got in there, it was being constructed. Now it has been commissioned, except the vice president invites News Central personally. Then we'll go with our crew and have access, maybe now to tour the facilities now that it has been completed.
Yeah, you're an Abuja bureau chief now, so I'm certain that you're going to get your invite soon. But Ahmadine, main thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Ahmadine. And maybe sometime you and I would get our invitations.
There we go.
So I'm hoping. But then again, I saw Nielsen Wike. They're our favorite scary uncle.
No.
One thing is, I was wondering, and I really wish that we had the opportunity to ask Ahmadine, compared to the projects that Nielsen Wike has put on ground or is commissioning, how this weighs compared to that, whether the same amounts of money or efforts were put into these infrastructure, especially roads. He's been commissioning a lot of roads, but this house, at 21 billion, there is credit to what they say about the fact that it'll only continue to increase in price. Get it done now.
Honestly, it's very interesting. But my own qualms is very interesting that one of the contributions for one of your attributes for your scorecard for 1 year in office is a completion of a building residency. That's it. That's all. It's not security, by the way. It's not. It's just the building of a residency. But anyway, we'll take a short break. When we come back on the other side this time, it will be the news at the top of the hour, and Adebola Adedugba is on standby. Stay with us.
Welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I am Adebola Adedugba. Let's begin in South Africa, where the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has been re-elected after a lengthy first sitting of parliament, which lasted for over 12 hours. He faced off against EFF leader Julius Malema, who received 44 votes compared to Ramaphosa's 283 votes. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo commended the members of the National Assembly for their conduct after a prolonged nomination and voting process. The leader, Stevenson, congratulated Ramaphosa while pledging his party's support to the government of national unity. EFF leader Julius Malema said his party accepted the results but remained opposed to the government of national unity. President Bola Tinubu has called for stronger collaboration between Nigeria's law enforcement agencies and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation in the fight against cybercrime, terrorism, and other related crimes. According to a statement issued by a special advisor on media and publicity, during Galale, President Tinubu urged these on Friday during a meeting at a state house in Abuja with FBI Director Christopher Ashare. President Tinubu characterized the visits of the FBI director and his team to Nigeria as a sign of the long-lasting partnership between Nigeria and the United States in combating financial crimes and terrorism. He made mention that his administration is diligently striving to eradicate terrorism, cybercrimes, and sextortion. A federal high court has fined Kano government the sum of 10 million for violating the rights of the post-emir Aminu Bayero. This development comes following Justice Liman Mohammed of the Federal High Court, Kano State, declaring that Bayero has jurisdiction to be heard. Justice Mohammed had on Thursday given the judgment in the case filed by the kingmaker, Aminu Babadan Angudi. Agundi had filed the case on the fundamental human right of Bayero in the ongoing emirate tussle. A Kano State High Court had also ordered substituted service on Bayero and 4 other emirs in a case filed by the Kano State government to restrain them from parading themselves as emirs. And staying with court matters, the Federal Inland Revenue Service has dropped tax charges against Tigran Gambayan, Binance's head of financial crime compliance. The charges were dropped on June 14th, according to FIRS spokesperson Dare Adekombi, who confirmed the charges against Gambayan and another individual were being dropped. Binance stated this latest move demonstrates Gambayan is not a decision maker at the firm. Gambayan and Nadim Anjawala, Binance regional manager for Africa, were detained on February 28 for tax evasion and money laundering. While Anjawala escaped custody, both executives and Binance face charges. The lawsuit further accused Binance of tax evasion. U.S. lawmakers criticized Nigeria for detaining Gambian, but the federal government insisted on due process. And still talking security, following News Central's town hall meeting held in Plateau State aimed at restoring peace, Managing Director of News Central, Kayode Akintemi, has reiterated his commitment in ensuring that the seemingly eluding peace in Plateau is restored. He was speaking when he paid a courtesy visit on the General Officer commanding 3 Armored Division and Commander Operation Safe Haven, Major General Abdulsalami Abubakar, as part of events for the town hall in Jos to enthrone peace in Plateau. Our correspondent Chizoba Anyonwe was on the entourage of Mr. Akintemi and now reports.
Lieutenant Colonel Ishaku Takwa welcomed Mr. Akintemi, Managing Director of News Central TV, and his team to the headquarters of the 3rd Armored Division, Maxwell Kobe Cantonment, Rukuba. Mr. Akintemi's visit marks his first time in Plateau State. For him, the need for both investigative and developmental journalism as vital tools to achieving peace in Nigeria is one of the reasons the media mogul is in the office of the GOC.
The reason why we're here is because personally I have chosen a path where I believe that there is a need for peace to reign in Nigeria and for development to be one that can almost be described as endemic, that there is development across board all around the nation. So for that reason, we have opted to make News Central a station that is focused on developmental journalism and investigative journalism.
Commending the army boss in the state for his unwavering effort in enthroning peace on the plateau, Mr. Akintemi says his collaboration is sure.
From our perspective, we're keen to support you. We will do everything possible to collaborate with the Nigerian Army here in Plateau State and anywhere else that they operate. Our job is to make sure that we give you the right reportage, because when you don't give the right reportage about what the military is doing, you create a situation where there is no understanding of your work.
With such synergy among stakeholders in place, the GOC 3 Division and Commander of Operation Safe Haven is optimistic that peace will soon thrive on the plateau.
We are determined to make sure that we bring the crisis on the plateau to an end. And that will include us bringing all stakeholders on board. And that is where you also come in as the powerful 4th estate operator. You have a very important role to play. And that was why I insisted that this morning too, no matter how tight it is, we should be able to meet and cross-fertilize ideas.
Agreeing that no development can thrive in the absence of peace, they promise to work tirelessly to ensure peace reigns in Plateau State and Nigeria. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
And outside Nigeria, the top court in military-governed Niger has lifted the immunity of the country's opposed president, Mohamed Bazoum, paving the way for a possible trial nearly a year after he was overthrown by mutinous soldiers. Abdul Galadima, president of the state court, the country's highest legal authority that was created in November by the military government, announced the decision on Friday. Under house arrest with his family, Bazoum is accused of having spoken by telephone with French President Emmanuel Macron and United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken in a bid to secure Western support during the July 2023 coup. The court proceedings were postponed twice, with Bazoum's lawyers complaining of several obstacles to the right of a defense. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Judith and Mazino.
And you're welcome back on Breakfast Extra. And this time, let's take a look into the fascinating yet tumultuous history of Nigeria's Third Republic. Now, the Third Republic of Nigeria, though very short-lived, is a significant chapter in our nation's political history. After years of military rule, Nigeria was on the brink of transitioning to the civilian government in the late 80s. The military regime of General Ibrahim Babangida initiated a political transition program aimed at handing over power to a democratically elected government.
And so in 1993, Nigeria held what was widely considered to be one of the freest and fairest elections in its history. The presidential election held on June 12 saw Chief Moshood Kashimamu Olawale Abiola of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, emerge as the likely winner against Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention, NRC. However, before the final results could be officially announced, the election was controversially annulled by Babangida, plunging the nation into a political crisis.
Now, to help us unpack the complexities and implications and also influence or lack thereof of the press and also oppression of the press inside of the Third Republic, we have with us today Mr. Tokunbo Ojekunle, veteran broadcaster and communications analyst. You are welcome on the show here, sir. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
I
joining
must
us.
say this is a full circle moment for me because you are the reason why I'm in broadcasting.
Oh, come on, Mazino.
Good to have you here.
Well, this is historical, though.
Yes, indeed it is.
I'm
Sir,
very happy being with you.
Thank you very much, sir. So now let's talk about the press inside of the Third Republic. Now we saw a system where we had military take over from the First and Second Republic, and then that formed what we now see as one of the most suppressed periods of our history when it comes to being journalists or being the press, where we're locked out or simply just oppressed, almost out of our profession. One thing was for sure, that it was the moment when people like Delegiwa was one of those people who lost his life, among other people who were either beaten or threatened or imprisoned. There's so many. You were at the peak, well, I wouldn't say you were at the that very moment inside of our profession here as a pressman. Could you tell us or recount for us how exactly this was for anybody who was a journalist at that time?
It was a sad period, very sad period for us, because you had been on honeymoon, so to speak. You were enjoying your job. You were actually doing your work as a journalist. And all of a sudden, things changed. What exactly changed? You couldn't write what you wanted to write. You weren't free to say what you wanted to say on radio. On television, you're watching the lips of your boss and his eye signal to let you know where you have goofed or not. All the time, nobody gave you an inkling to what exactly was happening, other than the fact that you saw what you didn't like. You may not know what you want, but you exactly know what you don't want. The military was just not it. You know, apart from the wide historical perspective of what the world is saying about the military regimes, Nigeria's was a special case. And I thought at that point that what the military wanted was just to feel power. They wanted power at all costs, and every single insect or fly or bee that crossed that path had to be brought down for their sake. And so all the journalists around had it very tough, very, very tough. Mountain of decrees. We couldn't... There was a people's decree of public whatever, that's decree number 2. Everybody knew about decree number 2. It just tells you, don't say what you shouldn't say, know what you say about the time you want to say it. And when you don't say it rightly, you're hacked down. Then you also had that about the publications of big organizations that had media prospects. Okay, it was a publication decree. Anything you did, you publicized, everything you published had to be in tow with what they want and not against them. And you know, the funny thing or interesting thing was like the press then, they call us the press boys. The media then, in my mind, was very stubborn. Very stubborn and strong-willed. And I recall that many publications went underground, and you wake up in the morning and you find them on the newsstands. How they were doing it was actually very unbelievable.
Would you also say that during that era, the profession was also had its shine, its prestige, and it was after that era that it declined significantly in terms of remuneration, standard of living for the pressmen and the workers, compared to that and the protracted time that we have now? Do you see that? Do you think that that was a glory days where the shine was and there was a lot of respect for men of the press?
There was, you're right. You are right to this perfect stage. However, okay, let me draw a demarcation here. The glory days were the glorious days where you had individual skills being exhibited. We had very good crop of writers, fantastic writers. Of course, I'm sure the daily givers of this world, they come with a fluke. The Reikos of this world were always there. Stanley Markable, they were always there. They were very factual and they wrote precisely the thoughts of the people and they shared it. Now, that period also, you had kind of boost of independent media organizations. Prior to then, just shortly prior to then, the government was in charge. Radio Nigeria, NTA, even the press, they occupy Daily Times of Nigeria. You have to belong to belong there, yeah. And because of that, the system permitted that they could always only treat them as civil servants. So when the independent media organizations sprang up, the Concord, you know, the Punch, you know, you got better pay. You had people going there. Sometimes people would go because of the philosophy they were actually driving.
And there were some sort of local celebrities, so to speak.
Fantastic. They brought them up, new voices came up, new hands, new pen pushers came out, and they were all doing so well. But the thing was, you know, you would choose what you want to read, and you had very strong following for some very prominent publications. There are some publications I'll mention now that tell you they sell out even before they get to the newsstands. Punch sells out. Tempo sells out. They all sell out because everybody wants to know what's going on. The Babangida era actually brought a lot of feature writing into news reportage. And they did it in such a way that people wanted stories, and the writers were given good background stories, and investigation was key in this sequence. So people loved it.
And so because of that investigative journalism as well, where we now started seeing those reporters and those writers being most times martyred, do you think that that's affected the future of investigative journalism now in today? I mean, when you take the case of Daniel Ojukwu, the writer who was absconded, you know, in quotation marks there by the Nigerian police force, and the other cases that we've seen in recent times?
Very good question. There is a carryover effect. I don't run away from that. Something will start, don't bother starting something. Once you start it, to nip it in the bud is going to be tough. When the military came, they came with facts all over the place, with immediate alacrity and automatic dispensation. Those were the mantra they sold in those days. And coming down to at that time, and soon after that time, post that time, you discovered that a lot of people, a lot of writers, just couldn't stand the heat in the kitchen. Many people left for other businesses. They walked off. Many, their parents didn't want them to even move near it. But over time, we lived with it. And because we lived with it and allowed it to go for a long time, we still have the carryover effect. To me, I still feel that a lot of questions still need to be answered by a controlling government, okay? Where the effect of the police is still being done, to me, a little bit overdone, okay? I still believe, and they keep telling you because the man said this and that and this. Okay, fine. Would that be the reason for you to go knock on his door and move him away from his, and they're asking you, what has he done? Meet us at the police station.
You have no right to ask this question.
Yeah, you don't have the right. And then you have a judicial system. Yeah. Unless you say you don't believe in the judicial system anymore, you have a judicial system.
Now, You said that the Babangida era actually spurred plenty of people to go into real creative writing when it comes to the news. It seemed like a glimmer of hope at that time, especially that he also initiated the, transition into a democratic system where we had MK Abiola, who was purported to have won. And that's the reason why we celebrate June 12th today as Democracy Day. It seemed like there was a glimmer of hope then, but it was kind of like snatched away. What was it like for journalists at that time, seeing that they had put in so much into trying to transition into this democratic system, but yet to get it taken away from them, from someone whom they thought was that bearer of hope, Babangida himself, only to just have it turn around 180?
It was a bad time. It was a sober time. It was a time that most people felt they had wasted all their skills and everything about journalism. Hope was dashed. You know, when you're a writer, sometimes you try to divert yourself from the situation, but you can't. In a situation of the annulment of that June 12th, it was a general catastrophe, bad sequence, and bad judgment. He had gotten, the questions for most people was, why did you drive us up to this point? Mm-hmm. Couldn't you have just done what you people do in the military? Just bring the coup on,
yeah, exactly.
Terminate it, and don't waste. They wasted time, they wasted money, they wasted everything was gone. And then it was defeating. It was so bad. I don't much care about what the international community said or did, because some of them came with a lot of sanctions against Nigeria. I agree, okay?
What kind of sanctions?
Well, sanctions, I think we had sanctions from Britain, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was economic sanction. Mm-hmm. From Britain, we had it then, yeah. And all that, we just became a pariah state of some sort. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to do anything, even African countries.
What role did international press play in the June 12 instance itself? Because Abiola was on the phone while he was getting arrested, I think on the BBC, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And there was plenty of press people around him at that time. But what role exactly did foreign press play for Nigerian democracy?
The fight was done on the pages of their papers. The fight, the movement, they talked about it, they said everything against it. But there's something I know about the diplomacy of the world. They will talk about the things they don't like your country doing. They talked against the military a lot, yeah. But because the military, they were in charge and they were in control, very little things will you have them say against them, taking major actions. We didn't feel that. The war for the democracy or anything in Nigeria was within Nigeria itself. People were fighting. People were actually fighting on the streets. Everything that looked at like a military wear was suddenly, became a hate of skills or icon in the mind of the people. So for me, foreign powers did, well, what did they do really? If it had been effective, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this thing now, for me. But it wasn't that effective. It wasn't effective.
If I remember, I was having this conversation with an author, a Nigerian author, Ike Anya. He's the author of Small by Small. It's a memoir of his time as a doctor, as a resident doctor in Nigeria in the 90s. And he was saying that in documenting history in his memoir, that one of the fascinating things that came to his mind was, for every incident that has happened in present-day Nigeria, modern-day Nigeria, he can pluck out something else that has happened in the past, And so in that instance, I asked the question, do you think the press has done enough? Do you think that in spite of the oppression of the press, they did enough in the Third Republic? And are we doing enough now in this modern-day republic?
In the Third Republic, they did what they could do. Virtually everybody who was scared to be lifted off from his bedroom and locked up. Many people didn't get back together again in many ways. And if you have been in the flow of the showing cars, so to speak, and you fought without actually carrying a gun, you would understand this particularly. they did what they could do. Not that they didn't do it. Whether it was impactful, yes, it wasn't. It was.
I guess that's the question. Was it impactful?
It was. Because, you know, there are some things happened back in the day. You are the announcer on duty on a radio station, and the driver comes for you in the vehicle. And as you get into the premises of the radio station, all you see are jackboots and guns. I was reading the news at the hour one time, close to middle of the time, the Oka coup. And all of a sudden, I looked across the glass, which is being controlled by a studio manager, and I saw that she was moving rather funnily, but I was looking at her, went back to the news, and I was concluding the news. They waited for me to conclude the news. And I just saw jackboots enter, you know, and as they walked in, you know, I knew, okay, in my mind, this had happened.
This is it.
Because where I was working then, they had prepared our minds for such things. Anything could happen. So as soon as they came up, they said, they made sure the microphone would cut and say, do you have martial music? I said, we do, but it's locked up in the library. Okay, do you know why we are here? I said, no. If I'd said yes, it would have been a different case for me. I said, no, I'm seeing you for the first time. Do you know, you don't know me? I said, I don't know you. Okay, fine. We're going to give you some music. You start playing it immediately now, and you leave it as it is. You don't stop it. If you stop it, you're gone.
I will stop you.
You just say, we're gone. And I said, wow, okay. Yes, sir. He became sir. Whether he was my rank, I don't want to know. He had the guns.
He had a gun, that's
and
it.
so we all, they lined us up on the corridor. We were seated on the floor, mosquito raiding area. We just sat down outside, and they were walking up and down, and they kept coming back. If the transmission stops, you are. How could we have? Transmitters are two ends, one at Ikeja, one at Ikorodu. Anything could happen to the one in Ikorodu.
And it's not your fault.
And it's not our fault. Even the one in Ikeja, anything could happen.
Yeah,
We're seated in the studio.
You're sitting idle instead of you to go fix it or
I knew, yeah. How we got out of that, now those things just, you know, they just hit me. They hit me, and I will never, they're just, up until now, the picture is there for me to see. And so likewise, many other people.
With the passion of, let's say, the old broadcasters of that time, with what they had and what they went through and how they were trained for these moments, and you compare it to current day journalists and the press, would you say that we're doing enough currently? And that's a very risky question to be asking you, quite frankly, but I've got to ask. With everything that we're going through as well, I mean, we have, like my co-host here, Judith, told about the abducted journalist from only just a couple of months ago, and repeated instances that have been reoccurring only recently, in the past 1 year. Are we doing enough? Should we push more? Should we put our lives on the line at this point?
Are we impactful?
No. We are, in a way. I'll tell you why. I don't shy away from ownership structures when I talk about broadcasting. I don't. Because the owner knows where the balls are coming in from. And he expects you to either dance to it, or you say, the issue is shaping, or you shape out. If you can't control your emotions on this job, this is where we stand, please exit yourself. So that's it. But the fact is that it still continues. That's where the problem is. You know, I answered her question the other time, and I said, I'm shocked that we still allow this kind of thing to continue. We have a judicial system. If I've written something against government, right, or anybody, okay, the next thing for you to do is not to come to my house and move me away like a criminal. Even a criminal still has a chance to talk, right? Yeah. So what you do is, hey, Mr. A, this is what we have found you have done, and so you are going to face, in those days, you are facing panels. You are not facing the courts. The panels are the ones. The treasonable offenses decree, I think, 35, okay? If you are locked into it, you are facing the panel. You are not going to court. But here, we expect that things should be done normally. And honestly, I think it has not really affected the quality of what we do. It hasn't. Rather, it's pushed it up a little bit. I walked in here, the other time I walked in here, I was happy that, wow, okay, this is it for a television station in this nation. This is how it should be. Okay. Over time, we've had cases of not doing well enough, but still doing well the way they can. Money is it now. But has it affected? It has affected the quality. It has affected the people. People have run away from this job.
I was going to come to that part. I feel
People
like
have
I think that the
from this
events of the
job.
past have
Yeah.
has hampered on the prospects in terms of future for this job. There are people who
Yeah.
don't want to go past a certain line for fear of being
They
martyred.
don't. They don't want to. And
Mr.
that is where
Tokunbo
we are
Jekwe,
at the moment.
we want to say thank you very much for taking time out to grace us with this session.
you.
A history class. All of today is a history class, and who better to give it to us than veteran broadcaster himself, Mr. Tokunbo Jekwe. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate your presence here.
Thank you for having
Yes,
me.
indeed.
Thank you.
Now, do stay tuned because we've got more coming your way. We're still going to talk about the Fourth Republic, only if you are here with us on Breakfast Extra. We'll be back.
And for our final big story, let's take a closer look at the history of Nigeria's Fourth Republic. And the period was marked by significant political transitions and democratic advancements, by the way. So Nigeria's Fourth Republic began on May 29th, 1999, marking the end of over 15 years of military rule. The transition to democracy was a pivotal moment in Nigeria's history, by the way, bringing hope and renewed aspirations for millions of Nigerians. Now, this era was ushered in by the election of President Olusegun Obasanjo, a former military ruler who played a crucial role in the stabilizing Nigeria's democracy. Now, the Fourth Republic has been characterized by the establishment of democratic institutions, economic reforms, and efforts to address the nation's deep-seated issues such as, corruption, ethnic tensions, and even economic inequality.
Now, despite the challenges Nigeria's democracy has endured with successive elections and peaceful transfers of power. Now, to help us explore the complexities and achievements of Nigeria's Fourth Republic, we have with us today journalist and author David Hundeyin. David, you're welcome. Good to have you here. David, can you hear us? Unfortunately, I can't hear you.
There you are.
Good. Now, David, let's start with the end of the military rule in 1999. What were the key factors that led to the military decision to transition to a civil government?
Well, at that point in time, the military administration of Abdulsalam Abubakar was what you would call a lame duck. It was out of options. So throughout the 5 years of 4 years of General Abacha's administration, there had been a running battle, not just with, obviously, Nigerian civil society and the likes of NADECO, but also internationally, which I think is a story that isn't told often enough. General Abacha was very much perceived, at least in Western circles, to be some sort of anti-Western postured head of state. And for that to be the case in what was then Africa's largest oil producer, which was, and then I think the world's 8th largest oil producer, was a significant problem, at least as far as the Western power brokers were concerned. So there was a whole international leg of the sort of anti-Abacha or the anti-military struggle in Nigeria that I think isn't known about enough. So by the time General Abacha died, under the very unclear circumstances that he did, because just to be clear, we still don't know what actually killed General Abacha. We have been told officially that it was a heart attack. And that's it. We've not been offered any further information beyond that. So at that point, it's easy to analyze it from the point of view of General Abubakar, thinking, well, if I, first of all, am I even qualified to take on this fight that Abacha took on, carried on his head for 4 years? Am I really that guy? I don't think I am. And then secondly, now that I've sort of accidentally found my way into this seat, how long am I even going to last if I decide to do what Abacha has done, or what Babangida did before him, or Buhari before that, or Murtala, or General Murtala before that, or go on before that, because if you if you check through Nigeria's post-Civil War history, it has never happened, with the exception of General Babangida, who became known as the evil genius because of that. It was unheard of for a military administration to last more than 6 years. There was always a coup that would terminate it. Right? So he knew that it was only going to be a matter of time before his head would be on the chopping block as well. So it was almost like a decision by default that, well, this is as far as this thing can go. This military adventure we have had for the best part of 20 years now, it's time to terminate it. So that also explains why even the transition to democracy was as sort of haphazard and poorly planned as it was. There wasn't really that genuine desire to set Nigeria up for proper internal democracy and, you know, a fundamental change in its style of governance. It was pretty much just, well.
So David.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, David, I wanted to pick on that word you just used, that style. And to do that, I'm going to refer to some past military dictators and also heads of states. Let's talk about Olusegun Obasanjo at one time. Let's talk about Musa Yar'Adua. Let's talk about Muhammadu Buhari. Now, these were at one time or the other military heads of states. And also at another time, they were presidents of the Nigerian system. So are there implications to our democracy that we've had these people serve as military heads and also as presidents? Has it worked well for our democracy currently?
No, it has not. And I think even the very fact that people who served as unelected military dictators who took power by force of arms have been able to come in and become democratically elected presidents under the supposedly democratic Fourth Republic is in itself an indictment on the nature of the Fourth Republic. Because as I was saying, the transition between the military and, well, let me not call it democracy, let me say civilian rule in 1999 was done in such a way that the Nigerian people didn't really have a say in that process. So the 1999 Constitution has as its first line, "We the people." That line is not true. Because we, the people, were never at any point consulted regarding the contents of that constitution. The constitution, by the way, remains one of the most problematic things about our continued existence as a nation, because there are several parts of that constitution that people were never consulted on. It was imposed on 100 and something million plus Nigerians by fiat at the time. That also spills over into even the nature of the electoral system that was put into place at the time. So the party now known as the PDP, which was a party that was created as a sort of elite consensus thing in 1998, like it was a sort of special purpose vehicle to bring together the interests of the ruling military establishment with those of the pro-democracy civilian establishments and the politicians from the old First and Second Republic, and sort of, you know, merge them into one thing. And that's what became known as the PDP. And, you know, were it not for the very unexpected transfer of power that took place in 2015, it would still be the case that Nigeria would essentially be ruled by a political party which was not, in fact, put together by a number of people with similar political ideologies or interests. It was just elite consensus. Completely disparate interests, people from different parts of the country who do not share any ideology whatsoever, who couldn't even express what their political goals or ideology or philosophies are. It was just power, sharing power. That's it. So even the well-intentioned things like the rotational power principle inadvertently exposes the reasoning behind those who set up the Fourth Republic. That is just, okay, let's share power so that we don't have an Abacha sort of situation again, which, by the way, is not something bad. I think it was a pragmatic way of doing things. But at the same time, it just goes to show that the Nigerian people were never at any point really considered to be an actual stakeholder in what was supposed to be a democracy, which I think violates the principle of democracy.
Of democracy, the very tenets of democracy. David, I would like to more dig into, you know, that school of thought that you just shared with us, that you raise very pertinent issues in terms of national identity and unity and the very tenets of democracy, which is at the very aim of it is for the people. But we need to take a short break to bring sports. So we would beg you to hang in tight with us. Now, when we come back on the other side for our viewers, we're going to bring you sports. We have Onyechi Obaru on standby. And afterwards, at the top of the hour for 10 a.m. sharp will be time for the news at 10. And we've got Adebola Adedugba on standby. My name is Judith Atibi. The Mazino Appeal is right by my side. This is Breakfast Extra. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching Breakfast Extra. It's time to bring you sports updates. The International Table Tennis Federation, ITTF, has formally confirmed the eventual qualification of Nigeria's Aruna Quadri and Algeria's Linda Legabri Ai from Africa for the event at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games in France. The confirmation was made in a statement issued on Friday by the ITTF with representation from Africa, the Americas, Asia and Europe. With less than 50 days to the Games, this week's World Ranking Update has seen 8 athletes secure their participation based on the selection of the continental quarters allocated to the World Rankings. The men's singles draw welcomes Africa powerhouse Aruna Quadri from Nigeria, alongside with America's rising talent Nicolas Burgos from Chile. 86 men, 86 women are expected to compete in the singles event at the Paris Olympic Games. Moving away from that to football, we'll say the ladies are making Nigeria proud. The Nigerian under-17 women team, the Flamingos, they have qualified for the 2024 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup to be hosted by Dominican Republic. This is after defeating Liberian counterpart 2-0 at the MK Abiola National Stadium, Abuja. A goal in each half from Harmony Chidi was enough for the team to secure tickets to Dominican Republic. Nigeria qualified 6-1 on aggregate, having won the first leg 4-1 in Monrovia. It will be recalled that Nigeria finished third at the last edition held in India. The 8th FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup finals will be staged in the cities of Santiago de Ceballos and Santos Domingo in the Dominican Republic from 16th October to 3rd of November 2024. Moving away from here to the international stage, where the Euros 2024 began with the host nation coming up with a dominant performance. Germany, they trashed 10-man Scotland 5-1 in the Euro 2024 opener as they kicked up the tournament in style in Munich on Friday. The start of the journey, they hope, will culminate in a record 4th continental title. Florian Wirtz struck the opening goal 10 minutes, and Jamal Musiala, he soon doubled Germany's lead with an emphatic win. A long-awaited night for the Scotland team went from bad to worse before halftime when Ryan Porteous was sent off for the 2-footer challenge in Ike Gundogan, while Kai Havertz had to convert the penalty. He was stammered for the day, of course. Nicolas Farug powered a fort midway through the second half after coming off as a substitute, and not even a late own goal from Antonio Rudiger could spoil the celebration from the German team as they began their opener with a dominant fashion. Moving away from here to the basketball, Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, they dominated Boston Celtics 122-84 on Friday to fend off elimination in the NBA Finals, denying the Celtics sweep in the best-of-7 championship series. Doncic scored 25 of his 29 points in the first half, and Kai Irving added 21 for the Mavericks, who also snapped the Celtics' 10-game playoff winning streak by still being in the mountain to clinch that try for them. We'll be hoping now that they are 3-1, Dallas will try to stop the Celtics from celebrating an 18th title when they travel to Boston for the Game 5 on Monday. We'll be waiting for that big one. I did predict that maybe this might end in a 4-1 lead for the Boston Celtics. There you have it, sport update at this time. I am Onyechi Obaru, handing over to the news anchor, Adebola Adedugba.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines here on News Central TV. I am Adebola Adedugba. President Bola Tinubu has called for stronger collaboration between Nigeria's law enforcement agencies and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation in the fight against cybercrime, terrorism, and other related crimes. According to a statement issued by his special advisor of media and publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, President Tinubu urged these on Friday during a meeting at the State House in Abuja with FBI Director Christopher Asha Ray. President Tinubu characterized the visits of the FBI Director and his team to Nigeria as a sign of the long-standing partnership between Nigeria and the United States in combating financial crimes and terrorism. He stated that his administration is diligently striving to eradicate terrorism, cybercrimes, and sextortion. The National Biosafety Management Agency has called on the public to exercise caution over the recent cholera outbreak in some states across Nigeria. The agency's head of information and communications, Gloria Ogbaki, in a statement on Friday in Abuja, said there is need for everyone to be cautious. The statement adds that the agency, in collaboration with health authorities, is actively monitoring the situation and implementing measures to contain the spread of the disease. Nigerians have also been urged to imbibe various hygiene practices, such as boiling drinking water or using certified water purification methods. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has supported the second phase of its humanitarian response initiative for affected population in Nigeria with a sum of $1 million. And this was revealed by ECOWAS representatives. The Nigeria Red Cross Society and other stakeholders met in Abuja to deliberate on effective humanitarian response and nutritional support for persons affected by the 2022 flood disaster in Nigeria. Our correspondent, Amadine Uyi, tells us more.
It was an inception meeting to commence the second phase of the ECOWAS project for humanitarian response for affected population in Nigeria. The project will focus on the post-2022 flood disaster, including food and nutritional support to vulnerable population, so ECOWAS support the project with about $1 million.
The ECOWAS Commission provided the sum of $1 million United States dollars has found for assisting victims of violence in Nigeria, referred to as Stabilization Fund for assisting victims of violence in Nigeria.
Stakeholders say their objective is to provide support to thousands in need in order to reduce their suffering.
They will be delivered through several methodologies, which include direct cash transfer, rehabilitation of existing domestic infrastructure, delivery of food and non-food items.
The project is aimed at alleviating the suffering of 2,100 households and 12,600 persons.
This $1 million USD contribution with additional 571,606 USD contribution from the World Food Programme will undoubtedly make a significant impact.
We aim to achieve significant outcomes that will make a lasting difference, to enhance resilience, strengthening the capacity of affected communities to withstand future disasters, improve health and sanitation by reducing the risk of diseases through improved access to clean water.
They also add that the objective of the project, which is already cut out, will be implemented across the 6 states of Adamawa, Kogi, Kebbi, Oyo, Rivers, and Anambra.
We are ready to go to the selected communities to deliver essential humanitarian aid to 20,000 individuals. That is about 3,500 households across the 6 selected affected states.
Let us continue to work hand in hand to build a future where every individual has the opportunity to thrive free from the burdens of food insecurity and malnutrition.
The project will be executed by the Nigeria Red Cross Society and the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has been re-elected after a lengthy first sitting of Parliament, which lasted over 12 hours. He faced off against EFF leader Julius Malema, who received 44 votes, compared to Ramaphosa's 283 votes. Justice Raymond Zondo commended the members of the National Assembly for their conduct after a prolonged nomination and voting process. DA leader John Stevenson congratulated Ramaphosa while pledging his party's support to the government of national unity. EFF leader Julius Malema said his party accepted the result but remained opposed to the government of national unity. New figures from the UK Home Office show a significant decline in foreign workers and students moving to the UK. The number has dropped by nearly 30% in the first 5 months of this year, from 121,000 to 85,200. And this marks the largest decrease since the pandemic. The drop aligns with promises from both the Conservative and Labour parties to reduce net migration. Skilled workers, students, and health and care visa holders make up the majority of migrants to the UK. The decline is attributed to government measures, including restrictions on dependents, increased salary thresholds for skilled workers, and limits on occupation visa schemes. According to the data, net migration stands at 685,000 for the year ending December 2023, down from a record high of 764,000 the previous year. And that's all on the news. It's back to Judith and Mazzino.
Thank you very much, Adidu. We are looking very, very Nigerian. That's beautiful. Loving that.
Yeah, that's Mazzino's Siri there.
I know, Siri just decided to say hi to you too, Adebola.
Yeah, Siri wanted to say hi. But Adebola, many thanks. We appreciate you for doing this. We'll see you at the top of the hour, or rather at noon, for the major headline there at noon. But many thanks again.
All right, now, we still have David Hunay on with us. Now, we were talking about the Fourth Republic from before, to which I asked many, many questions. I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask him a couple more questions.
Right.
David.
Yeah, but David, thank you so much for being so kind and just, being on standby for the last 1 hour. We appreciate you for doing this with us. Now, before the break, you were talking about, the very tenets of democracy in and of itself. And the most important and the most integral part of democracy is the grassroots democracy, which is, for the people, by the people, which is really the definition of democracy when you think about it. And you made a case and say, you argued that, that it's not been that way, even with this Fourth Republic, and the people have been so far removed when it comes to the dividends of democracy. And I'd like for you to talk on that. But before we go on there, one of the things of the Fourth Republic was that it was going to address one of the issues, or some issues that have plagued the entirety of our democracy, both in the First, Second, and Third Republic, and that is corruption and governance, right? And so what further steps are, should this government, this government they've tried to do with EFCC and other, agencies that are supposed to be fighting or curbing economic crimes and corruption, but still, we still see this in present-day time. So what are the further steps that we need to, necessary to enhance transparency, most importantly, and accountability in this government?
So, well, speaking from the point of view of someone who likes to analyze things from the bigger picture, I think it's fair to say that merely going after the symptom that is corruption, corruption itself is a symptom of a larger problem. So merely setting up your ICPCs and your EFCCs and giving the police more teeth will have some effect, but if the systemic issue underlying all of this isn't addressed, those things can actually end up becoming even parts of the corruption, which I think it's fair to say has happened. So I think Nigeria's primary problem in the corruption space is an economic one. The problem boils down to the fact that A, the Nigerian economy is too small compared to the number of people there are in Nigeria who are competing for resources, and B, the Nigerian state remains the wealthiest or the most economically powerful entity in Nigeria. Consequently, that means that anyone who is hoping to make a lot of money in a very short period of time needs to gravitate toward government in Nigeria, which is exactly what we don't want, because that's exactly where corruption comes from, right? There is the expectation that the Nigerian government is this huge pork barrel, is this reservoir of a never-ending sea of oil money, basically. So all you need to do is find a way, come up with a devise a scheme for sticking your fork into the barrel and taking as big a piece as you can manage. There was, I forget the person who it is, but there was a phrase that I heard from someone who used to be involved in the annual budgeting process. And this phrase has never left my mind. He said, whenever you're in those rooms where decisions are being made at, be it federal level or state level, that Nigeria becomes an orphan because nobody cares about Nigeria's interests in those rooms. Everybody's just looking for what will benefit them. So that basic problem that gives birth to that corruption that we witness on a visceral basis is an economic problem. The economy is too small. And there's the belief that not only is the government the easiest or the most reliable way to get access to your financial self-actualization, but that it's, in some cases, it's the only way. So those of us who maybe we grew up in the big cities or whatnot, we might not necessarily see the government as the be-all and end-all because we are visually familiar with what non-governmental prosperity looks like. But if you grew up in some village in Bayelsa and the only people you have ever seen in your life who are not existing in the same miserable poverty as you are people who are in or around the government, then you are visually unfamiliar with the idea that financial self-actualization or comfort is something that can be done outside of getting access to government money. And you would then dedicate yourself to trying to get a piece of that government money, which is, what leads to what we know as corruption. So there needs to be a sort of reordering of the Nigerian economic system that makes it such that the creation of wealth, the private creation of wealth, becomes easier and more accessible to people. That can be done through several means. It can be done, for example, through increasing the amount of power that is generated and distributed across Nigeria, because as you may well know, there's a very simple calculation in development economics that the greater the amount of electricity that is generated in your economy, the wealthier your economy is. The less the amount of electric power you generate and consume, the poorer you are. So power generation in itself is a very simple hack to creating more wealth in private hands in Nigeria outside of the government. It could be through investments in transport infrastructure, which makes trade with each other easier. That's one way of increasing the velocity with which goods and services move around the economy, which creates more wealth in private hands, which removes the need for people to think that the only way they can get access to financial comfort and self-actualization is by getting their hands into the government pie. So, but there are several other ways of doing this, but these are just
in creating this, this wealth that you're talking about. There are challenges that the Fourth Republic is facing, and it is increased, in the protracted time between 1999 and present, now 15th of June 2024, and that's from insurgency to banditry, terrorism, insecurity, kidnapping. I could go on. The list is endless. In trying to do that, I mean, all of this I just mentioned would definitely be in the way, wouldn't it? So do you think that from 1999 till now, the policies that have been implemented is helping or not helping? I know this question. You might bite me for this question, but humor me, please.
So I think maybe for the first 16 years of the Fourth Republic, definitely, I mean, numbers don't tell lies. So if I'm not mistaken, the lowest amount of annual economic growth that took place within those 16 years was about 4%. That was the least. As at when the economy was being handed over from Goodluck Jonathan to Muhammadu Buhari, which was in 2015, Nigeria was actually the world's third fastest growing economy, 7%, behind only Qatar and China. Numbers don't tell lies. So some of those things, I wouldn't say a lot of those things, but some of those things were being done. So under the Obasanjo administration, for example, one thing that I will always credit him with, for all the multiple failings that can be cited, but the one thing that can never be taken away from the Obasanjo administration was the liberalization of the telecom space. That on its own created incredible compounding returns in terms of private wealth creation in Nigeria. So as of 1999, ICT was a non-factor in Nigeria's GDP calculation. It was basically negligible, zero. As at today, ICT stands at, I think, about 16% of Nigeria's GDP. And a lot of that is held up by the involvement of businesses which simply didn't exist as of 1999. So businesses like MTN, for example, or Airtel. These are entities that simply couldn't have existed if this space was not liberalized, which was a government policy, right? Because there was the option to either keep on stoning more money at NITEL, the everlasting money pit that was NITEL, which, by the way, many people in government favored. If you might recall, a certain Adams Oshiomhole came out and wrote a very powerful, impassioned public defense saying that under no circumstances should the telephony space be opened up to private capital. The capitalists are going to exploit the people. NITEL there should be more investment into NITEL and yada, yada, yada. I think time has given its very clear verdict on these things after all these years. That was one space. Under the Yar'Adua administration, there were a few other reforms that took place. Under the Goodluck Jonathan administration, quite notably, I think one of the most important things that was done, maybe in a governance sense, was the introduction of the Freedom of Information Act, which obviously, as we know, still has a compliance problem. Right? Many public institutions in Nigeria still don't comply with it. But the reason I say it's so important is because prior to the Freedom of Information Act, the Nigerian government would basically pass a budget, write a budget, pass it through the National Assembly or whatever. And we, the people, did not know or could not know what was in the national budget. So it was basically that the budget will be passed to the National Assembly, and a journalist like yourself, who have maybe friends or contacts in the National Assembly, we then get maybe rough printed drafts or PDF copies of what they said is the budget. We don't even know whether that's the actual budget or not. And then you go report it, and that's all that we had access to. It was a ridiculous situation, but the introduction of the FYA made it such that for the first time in Nigeria's history as an independent country, Nigerian citizens could actually demand from their government access to information which was in the public interest. So now, even though there's a compliance problem, that has significantly impacted on even the culture of public corruption in Nigeria. There are certain things that could be very easily gotten away with.
So
as recently as
the lack of transparency in just even simple things as budget has hampered on transparency, and in that way, it's sort of exacerbated the situation that we find ourselves.
Absolutely.
Before I let you go, right, because I'm pressed for time and they're in my ears, but I have to ask you this question. There's an article, or rather a post that you posted on X, and this was yesterday at 6, I think it was in the morning, right? Now, at the very bottom of this tweet that you did post on X, you just made statements about this, and I want to ask you, right, and you share the same sentiments with another author that I've spoken to. You said African elites are by and large incompetent at national formation, incapable of sharing power, possess an infinite capacity for pettiness, and lack any willingness to make sacrifices on behalf of the collective or in service to the bigger picture. Any African state whose independence was defined primarily by elite consensus is very likely to be much more dysfunctional than those whose populations actively took part in a shared, organized struggle for freedom. Now, in the latter part of that, our struggle for freedom was by an inclusive, although African elites, but they were all from different parts of the major tribes of Nigeria, right? So Wazobia, Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo. Do you think that alone was, because you said African elites, and they are the ones, they can't be that, they can't form, national unity, a country, they cannot form a state. Do you think that was our fundamental or foundational problem that has exacerbated this issue to today, present day Nigeria?
I really do think that. And the reason is very simple. The reason is that the elites who came together to become what is now the Nigerian establishment were people who essentially didn't see themselves they saw themselves in comparison to the regular people, the hoi polloi. They saw themselves in a way that was similar to how even the colonialists would have seen themselves, right? So they were the Europeanized, educated, elite Africans who lived completely separate to how the regular people lived. So if you are creating a country which is going to be dominated in terms of population by those regular people. But you yourself are in no way representative of those regular people. You don't even know how they live. In some cases, you don't even speak the same language. I think it's fair to say, I speak for many of us who grew up in such elite spaces in places like Lagos and Abuja. Many of us don't even speak our native languages anymore. I learned Yoruba outside as an adult.
So then what would it look like in terms of solution? What would that group of people look like that would be solutions in a situation where, dividends of democracy is dispersed at the grassroots? What would it look like? Because the elites sometimes represent education, the educated, the enlightened,
So what I think the solution would be is that the so-called ordinary people have a weapon now which they have never had at any other point in human history. And that weapon is infinite access to infinite information via the internet. So the ordinary people, in their ordinariness, can become extraordinary in a very short space of time.
How?
So I think we've already started seeing signs, the green shoots of that in Nigeria, where, for example, political formation, political organization, which used to be something that spans decades, all of a sudden, political movements in Nigeria, really powerful political movements, the NSAS movement, the so-called obedient movement, these things came together in weeks. These things have never happened before in Nigerian history. So I think that access to information and that access to widespread communication that allows people to organize in large groups, informally, in very short spaces of time, outside of the control of elite consensus and elite spaces, I think that's where the hope is going to come from. And I think we've already started seeing the green shoots of that.
Well, I mean, like you rightfully put, now more than ever, when you walk down the streets, you see Nigerians, they're all clamoring for change. They are tired. And I do hope that tiredness translates to a pivotal change in the next 3 years.
David,
same here.
Thank you very much. I want to say that was a very beautiful piece you put up on X yesterday, and I do agree with you regarding the comparison between the DRC and Nigeria and how we got our democracy handed to us by our colonial masters. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, indeed. David Hunay, their journalist and author, joined us to talk about the Fourth Republic, and very interesting. You should actually read his article, which you also talked to.
Yeah. And luckily, I also had on our show Literati that we have here on New Central TV. There's an author that came as well and also shared the same sentiments. His name is, his book is Africa is on the Precipice, and it was the same thing about geopolitical zones and everything else. Nnamdi Chieku, so you can check it out. It's really, really good.
Okay, well, stay tuned. We've got another big story coming your way, or rather, big report. If you stay tuned, we get to talk about health and especially the cholera outbreak inside of Lagos. Do stay tuned. Now, let's address a pressing public health concern affecting Lagos State, a suspected cholera outbreak that has already claimed lives and hospitalized many. Now, this is a fact. As of today, 5 people have tragically lost their lives to what is suspected to be a cholera outbreak in Lagos. Commissioner for Health Akin Abayomi reported severe gastroenteritis. I'm sure the doctor is going to help us with that word later. These cases in Etiosa, Lagos Island, Ikorodu, and also Koshofe local government area, with about 60 individuals hospitalized. The deaths have primarily resulted from late presentation with extreme dehydration.
Now, the Lagos State Ministry of Health, alongside the Directorate of Environmental Health and the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, has launched an investigation into what is now a potential water contamination source in the Lekki-Victoria Island axis. Now, while cholera is strongly suspected, samples are being tested for confirmation. And so to help us understand the situation better and also to talk to us about public health and what we should know and should not do now that there's an outbreak, we have with us today in the studio Dr. Tui. He is a public health doctor and he joins us on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome,
Thank you, Mazino.
Thank you very much for showing up.
I would like for you to start with the basics, right? Can you explain what cholera is and how did we even get here? How is it being spread? The last time I heard a word cholera was 1992, 93.
That was a long time
ago.
ago.
That means you've not been listening very well. Maybe part of your conversation has not been cholera or health.
Yeah, no, what I mean is like an outbreak this wide.
2021 was worse. More than
Queen's College instance.
More than 100,000 with Queen's College. All over the states.
More than 100,000? Is that what you're about to say?
Yes, and more than 100,000, more than 3,000, more than during the COVID, more than the number of people that died from COVID. Last year, even 2 months ago, there was cholera outbreak. Last year, there was cholera outbreak. 2022, there was cholera outbreak. So, I mean, I will make sense of it. Let me just trace the flow of cholera.
All right.
1972, we had the first case of cholera in Nigeria. Okay, we're lucky. We had a break for many years until 1991. The cholera was imported for those guys that travel somewhere. You know, they came from abroad, brought cholera. Of course, then I lost quite a number of my people to cholera outbreak. It went everywhere, all over the world. It was a pandemic.
It was in 1990, I remember right well.
That was 1972 cholera. But 1991, they came back. Subsequently, it has been like an annual event.
An annual event?
So cholera is endemic in Nigeria. It's rare, it's said, kill some people, go back. Kill some people, go back. It's quite embarrassing for me, and I felt that I won't discuss cholera again. What? You know why I won't discuss cholera again? Since 2008, I've been on every main media talking about cholera.
So why is this so endemic, and why do we have outbreaks every single year?
Simple. Bad governance is number one. The cause. Poverty, illiteracy, underdevelopment. When you combine this in a society with high level of malnutrition and high level of inequality, you get cholera. You are cooking something. Because number one, the basic thing is water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's not more than that. Cholera is preventable, it's treatable. I mean, let's even look at the aspect of the preventability. Okay, look at it. Everywhere, I'm sure you driving around Lagos, you see people, you know, squatting and pooping on the road, pooping on
open defecation.
Big issues. You can be rest assured that as much as 60 million people, that's 6 million households, practice open defecation in Nigeria. So when you poo on the road, okay, and then when there's no source of water, when you have to actually do your own borehole, there's no source of water, and then there's the rain, it washes all your waste. And then if you want to wash your hand, there's even no water to wash your hand. If you want to boil water, there's no gas to boil water. There's no firewood. If you want to use electricity, it's expensive. So, and you look at the level of malnutrition and poverty in the country. And then you say there's a government, and the government cannot provide potable water for people to drink. As much as a lot of surface water in Nigeria and here and there, tell me the state of water supply. Even in Lagos, you can't create a mega city. You can't create a greater Lagos with this kind of level of water supply.
Now, let's
get. But now it's not just about Lagos. Now, right now, the cholera is in 10 states.
So 10 states.
10 states. And of course, we've seen about 65 deaths already.
Wow.
So it's not just Lagos.
So the count of deaths are increasing. So what are the typical symptoms then of cholera? Let's sensitize our viewers.
It's caused by bacteria called Vibrio cholera. Everybody gets your own name. So that's his own name, Vibrio cholera. Okay. Now, you pick it either from water surface, food, or from your hand or your fruits. That's actually
from fruits?
Yes, of course. Orophica. What it means that it grows from your feces, enters your mouth, cause problem, goes from feces, enters your mouth. Once there's contamination, the thing can then spread. The typical incubation period is actually about 5 hours to 5 days maximum.
How does it present like?
Okay, I'm coming there. So initially, constitutional symptoms, maybe headache, tiredness, but the classical sign of cholera is the watery diarrhea and vomiting. In fact, the 1972 one was tagged Onigba Meji. You have a bowl here, a bowl here. So you have to pour.
Yeah, those are the pictures.
I saw those pictures growing up.
You pour on both sides. But there are characteristics to that stool. It's like water. It's like rice water. If you just like that, pouring. Now, in the process of pouring, you see, the body is not really so mad. The body dictates the jam. I said that, listen, you must get out of here and start throwing it out. In the process of throwing the germs out,
dehydrating.
You lose water, you lose nutrients, the cell become problematic. And fertility rate is very high, more than 3.2.
I liked that you talked about the condition in Nigeria, where policies actually affect our health, where we have lack of infrastructure, and that also affects our health, where we have gutters open right across Ikeja. You see that the gutters have actually been exhumed, but they're still there on the road. They're going to go back, and people are... But what can people do, noting that we live in these conditions, to be able to ward off this disease, especially now that we're talking about an outbreak in Lagos?
Hold your government accountable. That's the first thing you need to do. I mean, don't let us pretend. Because if you campaign for me that you're going to provide water for me, you should provide water for me. Okay? I mean, that's... Then secondly, as much as possible, you have to act locally. Locally means that you must now be responsive. Act by yourself to protect yourself. What do I mean? You have to have what I call personal hygiene, food hygiene, and public or environmental hygiene. That's how it flows. Now, the act of hand washing, unfortunately, there's no water. It's very key. We should have taught this or ingrained it into our children, even in primary schools, or kindergarten. Wash your hand every time. Every time you're visiting a toilet and you're coming out, wash your hand. Every time you're approaching your dining table, wash your hand. Or you can use sanitizer. All of them are expensive now. So hand washing is key, that personal hygiene. Then keep your food appropriately, okay? Your source of water has become so important that it's not situated near a waste disposal source, okay, or even where the water is coming from. But I'm sure, I know it's tough to boil water. Try. If you cannot boil water, go and get water guard and drop in your water to deal with those things. And then when you have symptoms, don't start looking for anointing oil to drink. You know, ask, because it's very fatal. Ask a doctor, call a doctor, okay? So now your fruit must be washed, your hand must be washed, your plate must be kept clean. Then when you're approaching the dining table, always wash your hand first. When you finish, wash your hand. The hand is not about walking alone. It has a lot of signification for health and healthy living. So we need to take action. I agree that the source of water is very challenging. Recently, very embarrassing, in front of, should I mention the school? I will mention the school. In front of the school, on close to Off-Aulo Road in Ikoyi, there's a barrack surrounding the place. You see all the people in the barrack carrying buckets, carrying jerrycans to want to fetch water in the school in 2024 Lagos.
I hate that I know this place.
Yeah. Doctor, I was very concerned when you said that there is always a return annually of cholera. Exactly what is this tied to? Is it tied to the season? Is it tied to the
rainy season? It's because of contaminated water, the drinking rainwater.
Yeah, does it filter into our drinking water?
Perhaps it becomes more pronounced during rainy season. It's actually endemic, like I mentioned.
If that is the case, if it's more pronounced during rainy season, what can I do as a person who has to leave my barrack and go to school to go and fetch? What do I do to that water that I'm trying to get?
You don't do like this for prayer alone. Wash your hand.
But that water is contaminated.
Okay, so you have the water, okay? Make sure that your source of water is protected. If in the rural community, because you're a big boy in Lagos now, in the rural community, you have a bucket. Put water guard inside the bucket. Put a small cup on top of that thing, and use the cup alone to boil your water into where you want to drink regularly, okay? Because they don't have access to electricity. So, but why this thing keep coming back is the fact that we've not sat down and structure our water, sanitation, and hygiene. The lowest hanging fruit for us is to communicate it. That, guys, rain season is coming. It's not about destruction, because there are health implications to rain.
There was heavy sensitization campaign back, I think it was either the mid-90s or the late 90s or the early 2000s, and where we saw adverts for Water Guard. There were adverts for ORS, which is the solution that you drink as well. There was also, when you go to every hospital, every public health centers, you'd see the pictorial infomercial or infography posted everywhere. And there were adverts as well. There was also USAID, a number of NGOs, international health organizations, who partnered with local governments and state government and federal government as well to spread it, especially to the northern areas and parts where it was mostly prevalent. Do you think that that should also be introduced now, since you're saying that this seems to be a year-on-year occurrence?
We should have gone beyond that. You know, in reality, you, information giver or truth speaker, journalist, you are the one that tells us that, you know, if you keep repeating a thing every time,
it's madness.
So this thing, we should have gone beyond that. Let's move away from tokenism. Let's honestly discuss issues concerning us. Now, of course, the lowest level of government is the local government. That's where you act. That's where the sanitation is. That's where you can stop open defecation. That's where you can provide toilets in the public places. That's where you can educate food vendors. That's where you can educate food vendors and say that, listen, have you met the standard to provide food? Are you going to spread not just cholera, disease, hepatitis, or whatever from this food you are selling? Is this condition? Yes, again, everybody on the road, everybody just put food there. Sugar, you know, and that kind of thing. If you run a society like that, slum dwellers, I keep saying this, I stand to be corrected. That Lagos, for instance, is just a big dustbin. Some part of the dustbin may be a bit cleaner, maybe a bit cleaner. But it's just a big dustbin.
It's very interesting.
Look at how Lagos is. And you wonder and stood back and say, am I supposed to be living like this as a human being? You get really angry with yourself. They say that I choose to run back to my riverine community somewhere around the Ekpa area. I'm just going to just stay there and be looking at the water. Because Lagos is a big dustbin. How can a city be like this?
Dr. Tui, you raise a very good point, because when you think about it, the Olushoshan dump site is just 4 kilometers or more away from the state power. But the state of power. But away from that, I'm watching on television at the moment. I'm having a headache. I feel like I'm throwing up. I'm also been stooling, and I'm feverish. What's the first thing you'd advise me to do?
I think the first thing is that is it such that you don't have a number of health workers you can call?
No, I don't.
You don't have a health worker?
I don't.
Your case is actually to go to hospital.
Okay.
Now, I understand that in some cases you can use drugs, medication. Okay? We have, there's a bit more than 30,000 primary health care centers all over the nation. Not up to 8,000 are working.
I'm so tired. I don't think I can get up.
Hold on. You can get up.
I don't think I can get up. What do I do?
Because you don't know what you go to.
What's the first aid?
Go to primary health care center. First aid for what? You want me to recommend paracetamol for you, which is fake.
So go to the health care center.
Go to the health care center. Talk to a health worker. Because you see, I've seen a friend who just went somewhere in Victoria Land and bought anti-malaria. In a big pharmacy in Victoria Land. And the guy came down with kidney failure.
Oh, dear.
And he had to actually do a transplant. So where do you want us to start talking about health?
So
without proper governance, without people communicating appropriately. And the communication is at the level of the local government now, where you can, of course, do your gutters, do your sanitation, look at the food vendors, educate people.
Oh, doctor.
What else do you want to do?
So if you're watching from home, remember that if you feel any sign, you feel anything, go to the primary healthcare centers immediately. There's always one located wherever you are, and they're scattered in all local government area.
Just go there.
Oh, God, Doctor.
Dr. Tui is painting a very grim picture, but there are relevance to what you're saying regarding the health system and policies and all. Thank you very much, Dr. Tui. It's been very interesting having you here. Especially love the way that you tell. This is a very relative way that everybody can understand. We hope to have you back on the show again.
He's laughing because he knows, just stay right there. Dr. Tui is a public health doctor, and he joined us. We'll take a short break, and we'll come back on the other side where we'll wrap this up nicely with a bow. Stay with us.
Back, final segment, we turn our focus to Uganda, where a disturbing crackdown on environmental activists has raised global concerns. Now, on June 4th, Stephen Kiriza, an environmental activist working for Uganda's Environment Governance Institute, EGI, was abducted in Kampala. He was found days later severely beaten and also abandoned hundreds of miles away. Now, this incident marks the latest in what has been described as an alarming crackdown on those opposing the controversial $5 billion East African crude oil pipeline.
So now the EACOP project, supported by French oil giant Total and China's state-owned CNOOC, with minority stakes from the Ugandan and Tanzanian governments, has faced fierce opposition from environmentalists. Now, critics argue that the pipeline threatens national parks and would displace tens of thousands of people while also contributing significantly to global carbon emissions.
Now, to help us understand this, well, we were going to have actually Kwikiriza himself here, but unfortunately we are unable to do that. So we have with us Mr. Kato Usime in here with us, his lawyer. So we're going to be asking you all the questions that we have for, or that we had for Kwikiriza. You're welcome. Good to have you here, Kato. Now, Kato, with the recent incident, please just give us an understanding. Give us an understanding of what exactly happened with Stephen Kwikiriza and some more context to the story, as we have very little time.
Was abducted by the organizations and its personnel from Kampala, the capital city of Uganda. He was taken to an unknown place that we followed and checked to the various prison and detention centers, and we couldn't find Stephen on all the police stations around Kampala. And he was later released in a certain district that's called Kindugu district, where we could trace him from.
Kato, we're struggling to hear you because your connection is very, very poor. We're struggling to hear you. But we'll bring this story tomorrow in our Focus Africa for Tomorrow Breakfast Extra, which is our Sunday edition. But it would have been lovely to hear about the activist and his situation and what really transpired between the time he was abducted and was found. But hey, we'll try to bring this story tomorrow as much as we can. I think this wraps up the show today?
It wraps up class, because that's what today has been about since the start of the show, as we took a look at democracy now, right from the very first republic up until what we have now as our 25-year-old democracy, the fourth republic. And I hope that everybody at least went home with a little bit of something.
Oh, yes, indeed.
We talked about it from the angle of the media and everything else that we could accommodate. And that very last one with Dave Hundeyi was also an interesting one.
A nice bow to wrap up the show.
Yes,
and also we were able to, I hope you were able to pick one or two things when it comes to our health. It's very important now that you are out there watching. Please remember, when you go out, make sure to wash your hands. When you come in, wash your hands. You sing the birthday song as you're washing your hands. You want to sing the birthday song with me? Happy birthday to me. It's July 2nd. I'll see you tomorrow. It's good night from me.
Bye-bye, everybody. My name is Mazino Appeal.
I'm Judith at TV. I'll see you on Sunday. Bye for now.